Our final pay-per-view of the year, UFC 296, is coming up, and there are some incredible matchups on this card. I originally thought about doing a main event Devil's Advocate episode about Colby Covington, but first of all, I can't do my boy Leon Edwards like that. But also, there's a lot of these where I go to do them and I go, what is there really to say? Colby Covington, how is he going to beat Leon Edwards despite being the underdog? He's going to try and take him down. Is he going to have success against that? Based on what I've seen from Leon Edwards, I'm not quite sure. Is he going to be able to strike with him? Probably not. But yet, the fight is close because you don't know and we haven't seen them fight before. And Colby has taken down and out-cardioed nearly everyone he's ever fought. So there's just not a whole lot to talk about there. However, I do think there's quite a lot to talk about in the co-main event where we have the flyweight title on the line. Alexandre Pantoja defending the belt for the first time since winning it against Brandon Moreno at UFC 290 against Brandon Royval, who of course is going to be the fighter that we're going to be talking about today on this episode of Devil's Advocate. This fight to me was exciting, and then after doing the research, I am stoked for this fight because Brandon Royval is so much fun to watch, and Pantoja, need I say anymore, it's Alexandre Pantoja, right? So where to start with Brandon Royval in this fight? We will get to the fact that he has fought Pantoja before, and we will talk about Pantoja's last fight as well. We'll get to those in a minute. But the first thing I did was go back and watch Royval's current win streak. He is on a 3-fight win streak. He had a split decision against Bontarin, I believe it was, and then 2 finishes against Matt Schnell and against Mateus Nicolau. The one against Matt Schnell is both concerning and very interesting because he is losing that fight and gets dropped by Schnell in the first round, and then a great opportunistic submission, which when it happened I was a bit like, Schnell does this in fights sometimes, he kind of gives it away a little bit, but also you're like, man, Royval, what a opportunistic finisher he is. And then you watch the Mateus Nicolau finish where he lands that incredible knee, and I really rate Nicolau. I thought he was going to be the next title contender for sure. And Royval just puts him out with that knee in the first round out of nowhere, and you're like, okay, well that's interesting, because it isn't just that Schnell made a mistake. Royval is fantastic at capitalising on these opportunistic finishes. And we will get to that, how that relates to Pantoja specifically and how we can use that as a weapon as we talk more about Pantoja. But one of the things that jumps out immediately about Brandon Royval is his scrambling ability. I suppose we should just go straight into the first fight with Alexandre Pantoja. So Royval loses to Pantoja. He gets submitted in the second round, rear naked choke. And the second round, let's start at the start, right? That makes the most sense. So immediately at the start of the first fight, Alexandre Pantoja does what he does in every single fight, right? Everyone knows this at this point. He comes out like a bull at a gate every single time in these fights. He did it against Moreno, and I think that it didn't really work against Moreno because of how tough Moreno is. He was able to withstand that and then capitalise on the fact that Pantoja had gone so heavy for the finish in that first round. But Royval was able to keep himself safe because he got his back taken straight away, but his scrambling ability is so good because he's so active. Pantoja, as we saw in the Moreno fight, which again we'll get to, is so good at keeping people where he wants them. Like, he's always been a really good finisher, but I would say one of the things in his game that has developed since we first saw him on The Ultimate Fighter is he's composed when he needs to be. He does go all out. He is the cannibal. He does chase after the finish. But we saw in the Moreno fight that he had the composure and awareness to not rush later in that fight and win the rounds, most importantly, whilst trying to get the finish, instead of giving away a silly scramble or something like that. But Royval was able to stay so active that he was able to keep himself out of danger, and he managed to get back to his feet. And that is where you saw the momentum of the fight change, because Royval just started putting it on him. Incredible pace, some good striking. He, of course, did get caught a few times by Pantoja. We saw that with Moreno as well against Pantoja, where you can put the pressure on him and put the pace on him, but he is very accurate still, so he does swing Pantoja, but he does land a lot. Royval didn't seem to have too much issue with the power of Pantoja when he did get caught, and he just stayed in his face and kept walking him down, and, you know, ends up... Did he take him down at the end of that first round? I remember he's like raining down shots at one point with Pantoja on the bottom position. I sound full of cold because I was in London covering Cage Warriors, and if you go into any big city, I always come back ill. It happens. But quite an encouraging first round, despite having his back taken and controlled for some of it from Royval. If that's a 5-round fight and it starts like that, a little bit similar to Pantoja and Moreno, you're like, this might actually work in Royval's favour. And then the second round, you're like, yeah, this is how I thought this was going to go. Royval's putting the pressure on him. He's landing good shots. He's seemingly changed the course of the momentum of the fight within the space of like 2 minutes. And then makes one mistake where he overcommits and Pantoja just ducks under it and goes straight to the back, takes him down, rear naked choke, right? And then everyone's talking about the finishing prowess of Alexandre Pantoja, which of course is one of his best attributes. But in terms of looking at that fight and what he did well, you can see the game plan for what he'll try and do in the second fight. Presumably, which will be constant movement to keep Pantoja busy, both on the ground and on the feet. Constant pressure, because Pantoja is a very, very good fighter. He's a very, very good finisher. He's very powerful. But with that comes with, a toll on his cardio, right? He isn't a Moreno, a Royval, in that he will go and go from start to finish. He does tend to do, as we will talk about in the Moreno fight, a bit of a Jose Aldo style of fighting where he is so powerful and so explosive that he tends to win rounds by moments, and then will kind of course through moments and take rounds off, as he did against Moreno, which in the end, he was able to rally incredibly in that fight to win it. But there was a moment after watching it back where I was like, how does Moreno lose this? Because right now he is just in the ascendancy, and then Pantoja, because he's smart, because he knows when to take time off, is able to come back and steal the last couple of rounds. I say steal, you won the last couple of rounds. But yeah, the game plan to me spells itself out right there, right? Constant movement, constant pace, constant output, and just not letting Pantoja settle at any moment. Now, of course, that is very difficult, because if you're going to stay in Alexandre Pantoja's face, he is going to catch you with shots, and that is worrying. And also, as Royval found out the hard way, if you overcommit, he is so good at kind of like cutting out, if you have 5 steps in order to get the guy down and get on his back and get a choke in, he manages to cut out like 3 of those steps in the middle, right? Like, he's just so efficient at it. I believe he was Jose Aldo's grappling coach as well, right? Jiu-jitsu coach. This is like, I've plucked that memory from when he was on The Ultimate Fighter, and I haven't revisited it since, so I think that's true, but I could be wrong. So I, of course, went back and watched the co-main event of UFC 290, Brandon Moreno versus Alexandre Pantoja, which is an absolute banger. I forgot how good that fight is. It is absolutely fantastic. And basically to look at where Brandon Moreno was successful against Pantoja, and obviously that was on the feet, where his boxing was the clear difference in terms of speed and combinations, because Pantoja has the advantage in power, and that was a big turning point in a lot of those striking exchanges, because Moreno would land 3 strikes and you're like, Moreno looks fantastic, and then you get caught with something, you go, oh, he can't take too many of those, right? And I think it will be the same for Royval and Pantoja as well. But the speed, right? The speed is the difference, and also Royval's just constant movement, keeping Pantoja guessing, but also just making him work, right? That is the key to this fight, is making Pantoja work when he doesn't want to. I'm going to compare the Moreno and Pantoja fight to Jose Aldo, in that when Max Holloway beat him, it was like, well, that's what people have needed to do to Jose Aldo for years, but no one's been able to do it, right? Which was constant pressure. The first couple of rounds of Max Holloway and Jose Aldo were really competitive, and you're like, Jose Aldo, man, he is so good, he's turning back the years. But then you kind of are like, Holloway is making him work, and yeah, he's taking some shots, but he's really forcing Aldo to fight. And that is key for Brandon Royval against Alexandre Pantoja, because, like I said, Pantoja does tend to take minutes of rounds and sometimes whole rounds off. And he is such a good finisher that it doesn't usually matter, which is, of course, a worry, because Brandon Royval's style is so chaotic. Is maybe not the right word, but I I don't know what the right word is because it is quite chaotic, but it is controlled at the same time. It's just very kinetic, maybe is the right word. It's just constant something happening, which is on one hand a nightmare for Alexandre Pantoja, but I also think it gives Pantoja a lot of opportunities. So that is what Royval has to be careful for. Now, in fairness, when he did get taken down in his first fight with Pantoja and got his back taken, I was really impressed by how composed he was able to stay. Like, yes, he was constantly moving and wriggling and turning, but defensively aware at all times, right? Brandon Moreno was able to do the same things when he was taken down by Pantoja and had his back taken, right? Just staying defensively sound. And Pantoja smartly didn't rush anything, but I do think that Royval will make him rush by how active he is and just how he just seems like a nightmare to hold down. So I think that sums it up, really, for my notes of why Brandon Royval can beat Alexandre Pantoja and become the flyweight champion. And I wouldn't have expected myself to have this viewpoint. Obviously, devil's advocate is not necessarily what I think is going to happen. It's me making the case for why it can. But after watching this footage, I'm a lot more confident in Brandon Royval than I was before, because for so long I considered Figueiredo and Moreno to be the best flyweights in the division, and then Pantoja, I was like, this guy's the man. And then when he goes on to fight Brandon Moreno, everyone was like, we like Brandon Moreno, but that Pantoja's a scary dude, and he proved it, right? And I was really impressed by Pantoja because I thought there were multiple times in that fight where it was going to slip away from him and he didn't let it. But I think Royval might have the style to do it, you know. I do think that if he's going to get it done, he is going to have to, you know, go through some tough moments, similar to when Brandon Moreno fought Deiveson Figueiredo for the first time, and you're like, wow, Brandon Moreno put up an incredible fight, but you're also like, how can he do that again? Because that must have taken a lot out of him. I think it is going to be, he's going to have some tough moments, but combination of the things I've spoke about, pace, pressure, constant movement, make Pantoja work, but then also to go back to what we said at the start with his finishes over Matchdown and Mateus Nicolau, opportunistic moments, because Pantoja, he isn't sloppy when he's tired. He just isn't as switched on, right? His striking, he tends to drop his hands a lot when he's tired. And we have seen him rush in the past when it comes to grappling and submission attempts and things like that. So I do think there will be little moments that Royval might be able to capitalise. It's whether that he's also moving so much and moving so fast that he also makes those mistakes and isn't able to capitalise. But from what we saw in the first fight, I think Royval will take, of course, you know, he would have been gutted to lose that fight, and he will be cautious of overcommitting and Pantoja taking his back once again and submitting him. But I do think there are a lot of positives to take from that fight as well, that if he doesn't overcommit, it definitely seemed like the fight was turning in his favour. But man, these guys are so good at just changing the course of a fight in the blink of an eye. We've seen it from both guys, so in that aspect, it could go either way, but I think that Royval making Pantoja tired will open up that opportunity for him a lot more than, you know, that first round's going to be tough. We'll leave it there. Thank you for checking out this episode of Devil's Advocate. I hope you're as excited for this flyweight title fight as I am, because before I was like, let's go Rocky Colby, and now I'm like, those two title fights, some good stuff indeed. So yeah, thank you for checking out this video. We will have another episode of Devil's Advocate out either before or after this on the 296 card, so check that out as well, and enjoy the fights.